Chosen one, your body already knows who I am talking about. Before the debate starts, before the reasons and the counter-reasons, before you tell yourself you are being too sensitive, something in you already answered the moment you arrived here. I want you to stay with that for a second, because there is a version of this that happens at 2 a.m. in the quiet. You are not asleep. You are replaying something, a conversation, a silence, a pattern you have seen too many times to call coincidence. And somewhere in that stillness, a thought comes, clear, unasked for, almost startling. This is not right. This person is not where I am going. And then, right behind it, the shutdown. But I cannot. But they need me. But what would that make me? Here is what I need you to hear today. The first thought was not anxiety. It was not selfishness. It was God. And here is what I also need you to hear. You can love someone completely, genuinely, historically, really, and still be called to release them. Real love and right alignment are not always the same thing. A person can mean everything to your past and nothing to your future. That is not abandonment. That is discernment. That is the most spiritual, most courageous, most God-honoring act of your entire season. The blessing you have been waiting for is not behind more effort. It is behind one single act of clarity. And something greater than chance has brought you to this moment, because the time for waiting is over. Before we go any further, I want to ask you to stay until the very end of this message. Because when we finish, you are going to leave with 3 specific things, a way to clearly identify what God has actually been showing you about this person, a real framework for how to move when everything inside you is pulling towards staying, and the declaration over your life, the identity that belongs to you spoken before you go. Stay until the end. What is here is worth it. Now let us name what is actually happening. Not in the abstract, not in vague spiritual language, in the specific, observable, honest language of what your life has actually looked like with this person in it. Let us begin with behavior, because the evidence does not lie, and it has been speaking to you for a long time. Think about the last time you had real news, a win, a possibility, a dream that was just starting to take shape in your chest. Think about who you told first, and then ask yourself honestly, was this person on that list? Because if you are really honest, they were not. Not because you forgot, but because somewhere along the way, through a look, through a silence, through the quiet way they had of making your good news feel slightly smaller, by the time the conversation ended, you learned to protect your joy from them. And you started self-editing before you even realized you were doing it. You stopped talking about certain goals around them, not because they told you to, but because the energy in the room shifts when you do. And you learned, over time, that sharing your vision with this person cost you something you needed to keep. So you hold it back, and you smile, and you talk about other things, and you carry what is most alive in you somewhere they cannot reach it. That is not a personality conflict. That is a signal. Think about how you feel when you leave their presence, not after a bad day or a difficult conversation, just a regular interaction. Do you feel like more of yourself or less? Do you feel expanded or carefully arranged? Do you feel like someone who is moving towards something, or like someone who has just finished managing a situation that should not have required that much management? Your prayers around this person are complicated too. You pray for them, yes, but you also pray about them repeatedly, in circles, bringing the same confusion back to God, because something in you cannot settle. And that recurring, unresolved quality of the prayer is not a lack of faith. It is information. It is the spiritual equivalent warning light that keeps coming back on no matter how many times you clear it. The exhaustion is real, And it is not the exhaustion of life being hard. That kind of tired makes sense, and rest repairs it. This is the exhaustion of managing. The version of yourself you present when they are near. Managing the gap between who you are becoming and who you feel permitted to be in their presence. Managing the weight of a connection that requires constant maintenance just to stay functional. That kind of tired is not life asking you to rest. It is God asking you to look. Now let us go into the emotional layer, because this is where it gets complicated, and I want to sit here with you for a moment, because this part deserves the space. This is not a simple story. I want to be clear about that. This is not. They are bad, you are good. Walk away and never look back. The reason you have been circling this decision for as long as you have, the reason a message like this could even land is that the love is real. Whatever happened between you was real. And releasing someone you genuinely love is one of the most spiritually demanding things a human being can do. It is not supposed to feel simple. It is supposed to feel like exactly what it is, a significant choice made at a significant cost, for a significant reason. I know what it feels like to sit with two things that seem like they should cancel each other out. I love this person, and this person is not right for where I am going. Both of those sentences can be true at the same time. And you do not have to resolve that tension before you are permitted to move. The complexity of how you feel does not invalidate the clarity of what you know. There is something that happens in your body when you imagine life without them. It is not clean grief. It is something layered, almost like relief, and then guilt about the relief, and then grief about the guilt, and underneath all of it, something very quiet that has been waiting for you to finally stop arguing with it. Joseph did not choose what happened to him. The people who should have celebrated his gifts were the ones who could not stand the size of what he carried. And for a long time, everything about that separation looked like a tragedy, like the most brutal, most unjust outcome imaginable for someone called by God. But the removal was the mechanism. The distance from people who could not hold his future was the exact path that led him to his destiny. He did not know that in the pit. He only knew the grief. You are not in a pit, but you may be standing at the edge of one, at the place where you have to decide whether the separation you are afraid of is the tragedy or the threshold. And the answer to that question is already living somewhere inside you. You brought it into this conversation. You have been carrying it for a while. When you imagine your life 3 years from now, the version that feels most alive, most purposeful, most like the thing you were genuinely built for, is this person in that picture the way they are right now? Or does something in you already understand that the picture only opens up fully when this particular weight is no longer in the center of it? That understanding is not cruelty. That is God. Now let us go to the spiritual level. Because at the root of this, underneath the behavior and the emotion, there is a reality that needs to be named plainly. Not everyone belongs in your inner world, not because they are less valuable as a human being, but because proximity determines influence, and influence shapes trajectory. And some people, even people who love you, even people with completely sincere intentions, create conditions around your calling that your calling cannot grow in. Their doubt becomes your doubt. Their ceiling becomes your ceiling. Their unresolved wounds become the lens through which they see your movement, and something about that lens consistently makes your progress look smaller, more dangerous, less possible than it actually is. Esther understood this. She was not careless about who had access to her presence. She knew that her assignment had a specific shape, and that not every relationship was built to hold that shape without distorting it. She discerned. She protected the space around her purpose with intentionality. And because she did the thing she was called to do was preserved long enough to actually happen. You have a calling. You have something God placed in you that has a specific shape and requires specific conditions to grow. And every time you move toward it, every time you take a real step in the direction of who God made you to be, notice what happens around this person. Do they move with you? Do they celebrate what is being activated in you? Or do they find a way, sometimes obvious and sometimes subtle, to bring you back toward a version of yourself that asks less of the world and therefore asks less of them? Here is a truth that has to be said plainly. Some pressure forms you, some weight makes you stronger, but not every pressure is productive and not every weight develops you. Some weight simply crushes. And real discernment, the kind God gave you before any system or tradition tried to override it, is the ability to tell the difference between the pressure that is making you and the weight that is only draining you. The clarity you keep returning to, the quiet knowing you keep dismissing, the signal that keeps coming back no matter how many times you reason your way around it. That is not something you invented. That is something you were given. So now we have seen it from three angles. What it looks like in your behavior, what it feels like in your heart, what it means in your spirit. The picture is clear, but here is the question that matters most, the one this whole message has been building toward from the beginning. Why have you not moved? I do not ask that as judgment. I ask it because the answer to that question is where your real freedom lies. Because you are not stuck because of confusion. You already know. You are not stuck because of a lack of faith or a lack of prayer. You are stuck because there is a pattern in you older than this relationship, deeper than this situation that has made staying feel like love and leaving feel like betrayal. At some point in your life, you learn something about how you earn your place in the first world. You learned that your worth was connected to other people's comfort. That if people around you were okay, then you were okay. That if someone needed you, that meant you had value. And that if you ever chose yourself, ever caused someone pain by walking in your own purpose, that made you the kind of person you did not want to be. It is such a quiet thing. Most people who carry this pattern do not even see it as a pattern. They see it as love, as loyalty, as just being a good person, and those things are real, but underneath them, something else has been running. A belief so deep it barely feels like a belief anymore. That you do not have the right to choose yourself. That your calling is secondary to someone else's needs. That the moment you stop being what this person requires you to be, you will lose something you cannot afford to lose. And so you manage, and you adjust, and the blessing waits. I want to say something to that part of you, not with judgment, but with the kind of directness that only compassion makes possible. You are not being asked to stop loving them. You are being asked to stop making their comfort more important than your obedience. Those are not the same thing. And the guilt you feel when you consider leaving, that guilt is not God's voice. It is the voice of a pattern that has been running so long it sounds like conscience. But it is not conscience, it is conditioning. And today, you are allowed to see the difference. There is one more layer underneath it, and I want to name it, because naming it is the first act of real freedom. Underneath the people-pleasing is a transaction, a quiet, almost unconscious negotiation that goes something like this. If I hold on long enough, if I sacrifice enough, if I prove I am not the kind of person who abandons someone, then eventually I will have earned the right to what is coming. But grace does not work on a transaction system. Your blessing is not something you earn by enduring what you were not built to endure. It was prepared before you began the endurance. The only thing separating you from it is not more patience. It is one single act of alignment. I want to be honest with you here, because I would rather tell you the truth than tell you what sounds good. I cannot promise that the moment you release this person, every door will immediately open. I do not know your timeline. Only God knows that. What I can tell you, based on what I have seen again and again in the lives of people who finally made this decision, is that something shifts. Something that was frozen begins to move. Not always loudly, sometimes quietly, like the first hour after a long storm passes, when the air changes and you suddenly remember what it feels like to breathe fully. Stay with me, because in the second part of this message, I want to give you something real. Not a spiritual concept, a practical framework for how to actually move when everything in you is pulling towards staying. 3 specific paths. A tool for what this transition actually requires at a deeper level than most people address. And the declaration that belongs to your life, spoken over you before you go. The most important part is still ahead. Let us talk about what this actually looks like. Because let go is easy to say and very difficult to do. And most messages like this will tell you to simply walk away, as if walking away were a simple thing, as if years of real history and genuine emotion could be dropped like a coat at the door. I want to give you something more honest than that, something you can actually use. First, a distinction that matters. When I say delete, I do not necessarily mean a dramatic exit. I do not mean a confrontation, a final message, an announcement. For some of you, it will look like that. But for others, it begins much more quietly as an internal realignment, a decision made in your own heart before anything changes on the outside, that this connection no longer has access to the center of your life. You change where they sit in your consciousness, in your prayer life, in the portion of your emotional energy that goes toward maintaining this relationship. Sometimes the most powerful move is not the one that is visible to anyone else. It is the one you make, alone, in the quiet, between you and God. Here are 3 paths, not as a prescription, as options. You will know which one is yours. The first is discernment, and I want to give you something specific you can use right now, in this moment, without moving from where you are. There are 2 voices that speak when you sit with a relationship like this. The first is the voice of fear. Fear asks, what will happen to me if I go? What will they think? Will I be alone? Will I be wrong? The second is the voice of discernment. And discernment asks a completely different question. Discernment asks, what is already happening to me if I stay? What is not becoming, not moving, not opening, because this connection is occupying the center of my life? I want you to sit with that second question right now. Let it rise in your chest slowly. Not as an exercise, just as an honest moment between you and what you already know. What is already happening to you if you stay? The answer that arrives before fear has a chance to silence it. That is the answer that matters. That is the voice of the Spirit. The second path is boundaries, and I want to reframe this word because it is one of the most misunderstood words in any conversation like this. A boundary is not a wall. It is not cruelty. It is not the withdrawal of love. A boundary is a definition, a clear, quiet description of where your energy goes and where it does not. And you do not have to remove this person from every part of your life simultaneously. You begin where the drain is most acute. Maybe you stop sharing your deepest dreams with them first. Not with anger, not with explanation, simply because your dreams need soil that can hold them. And you have learned that this person is not that soil. Maybe you stop being the first person they call in their chaos. Maybe you create distance that is quiet, deliberate rather than loud and dramatic. You are allowed to love someone and not give them unlimited access to your inner world. You are allowed to care about someone and still choose to invest your primary energy in a direction that does not lead back to that specific drain. That is not coldness. That is the stewardship of your calling, and God honors stewardship. The third path is release without resentment, and this one is for those of you who know, in complete honesty, that the real reason you have not fully let go is not just love, it is unfinished anger. There is a very specific kind of staying that has nothing to do with the other person anymore. It is staying as protest, staying so that one day they will see, staying so that eventually you will get the acknowledgement that you are owed. And I want to say this plainly, with full compassion, that kind of staying costs you more than it costs them. You are not free when you are tethered by resentment, even when the tether looks like distance. Forgiveness in this context does not mean what they did was acceptable. It does not mean you return to the relationship or explain yourself or give them another opportunity. It means you refuse to let what happened continue to shape your future. It means you take back the authority over your own life that resentment has been quietly giving to them every single day. This is not something you do perfectly in a single moment. It is something you choose and then choose again until one day it is simply true. These three paths, discernment, boundaries, release, are not meant to be done in order. They overlap, they circle back. You may be in all three simultaneously. What matters is not that you do any of them perfectly. What matters is that you begin. Now, I want to say something that I do not always include in a message like this, but I believe is directly relevant to where you are right now. Here is something most people do not consider in the aftermath of releasing a connection that has been draining them. You pray, you decide, you create the necessary space, then you wait for something to shift quickly. And sometimes it does, but sometimes clarity takes longer than expected. The energy takes longer to return, and part of the reason is something that happens at a level most people never address, the level of the brain itself. When you have been in consistent proximity with someone who drains your energy, someone whose presence consistently brings your inner world into a lower, heavier state, your brain learns to operate there. This is not weakness, this is neuroscience. Scientists who study this call it neural entrainment. Your brain synchronizes with the frequency of the environment it spends the most time in. And when that environment is consistently heavy, doubtful, diminishing the neural pathways that carry your sharpest intuition, your clearest thinking, your most alive creative energy begin to quiet themselves down. These are called gamma waves, and they are not a concept, they are measurable. Gamma is the frequency the brain produces when you are at your highest, when ideas connect, when inner knowing speaks clearly, when the sense of being called and guided and alive to your purpose is not a struggle, but a natural state. Children have abundant gamma. That is part of why they learn so fast, why they are so creative without trying, why they have an unfiltered knowing that adults spend years trying to recover. But life, and especially chronic proximity to environments that consistently diminish rather than expand you, begins to quiet that frequency down. Scientists who study this call it the decline effect, and it is not a life sentence. What can be quieted can be reawakened. I want to mention something I came across in my own season of clearing a connection like this, not as a requirement, simply as something I found genuinely useful and believe is worth knowing about. A neuroscientist named Dr. Robert Lake, who has spent 34 years in this field and whose work draws on research from MIT, Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, and Columbia, developed an audio track specifically designed to reactivate gamma waves using a technology called brain entrainment. It is 7 minutes long. You wear headphones, close your eyes, and simply listen. No meditation practice required. No hours of stillness you cannot access. No equipment to learn. 7 minutes. And the science behind it is the same science that biofeedback therapy clinics have. Charged $300 per hour to deliver, or that professional home equipment has cost as much as $7,000 to provide. Dr. Lake took that same technology and put it into a single audio file that anyone can use, anywhere, at any time. I want to be honest with you about what this is and what it is not. This is a tool, a real one, grounded in real science, that supports what is happening at the neurological level when we step out of a depleting environment and into a new season. It does not replace the work we have been doing in this message. It does not remove the grief of a real release or do the decision for you. But for those of us who have made the choice and then felt the recovery moving slower than expected, who have wondered why the clarity felt distant even after the decision was made, this is support for the specific layer where the drain actually happened. The standard price for this track is $49, but Dr. Lake has made it available at $39 specifically for those who come to it through this message, not through any store, not through any other platform, not through searching for it online. That $39 includes the main 7-minute track, plus 4 additional resources, an audio designed to support focus and confidence in children, the original book that the film The Secret was drawn from, which is more grounded and financially practical than most people know, a guided visualization across 4 areas of life, including money, relationships, health, and purpose, and a printed infographic of the 5 most important practices for creating the future you are now stepping toward. All of it comes with a 100% money-back guarantee, with no time limit, no conditions. If you listen and feel nothing different, the full amount is returned. No explanation required. One important thing I need to mention: there are imitation versions of this product appearing in other places, other websites, other platforms, other listings that carry the same name. They look the same, but they do not contain the actual brain entrainment technology embedded in the original. They are, at the level that matters, just ordinary audio. The only version that contains the full science, all 4 bonuses, and the money-back guarantee is through the single link I have placed in the description of this message and the pinned comment. Please do not search for it anywhere else. What you find there will not be what we are talking about here. For those who feel that this is for your season, the link is there. For everyone else, let us finish what we came here to do. Because the most important part of this entire message is right in front of us. Everything we have walked through today, the diagnosis, the route, the paths, the tools, all of it has been moving toward this. Because the reason this decision matters is not only about one relationship, it is about who you become when you make it. It is about the identity that has been waiting underneath all the managing and the adjusting, and the years of making yourself smaller so that someone else could stay comfortable. I want to speak 3 things over your life right now, not as spiritual flattery, not as encouragement for encouragement's sake, as truth. The first is this: you are a cycle breaker. You are the one in your generation, in your lineage, in your relational history, who ends the pattern of staying too long, of shrinking to be loved, of trading your assignment for someone else's comfort, so they do not have to feel the discomfort of your growth. That pattern has moved through your history, through relationships, dynamics that look different on the surface but carried the same root, but it ends with you. Not because you are harder than everyone who came before you, because you are here, because you heard this, and because you are going to do something about it. The cycle breaker does not apologize for outgrowing what could not hold them. The cycle breaker understands that the kindest thing they can do for themselves, for the problem, people who come after them, is to stop the loop. The second is this: you are a spiritual warrior. I want you to understand what that actually means, because it does not mean you are someone who never feels afraid. It means you are someone who moves forward even when you are. It means you hold your ground, not out of stubbornness or hardness, but out of deep, settled knowing. You know what you were built for, and you have learned, sometimes at significant cost, that what God placed in you is worth protecting. A spiritual warrior does not collapse when the right choice is the costly one. A spiritual warrior stands, and then, from that standing place, they move, not recklessly, with clarity, with the quiet authority of someone who has decided that their calling is worth the price of obedience. The third is this: you are a truth carrier. You have always been able to see what others were not willing to see. You feel the misalignment before anyone else can name it. You sense the departure from what is right before it becomes visible. And you have paid for that sensitivity in relationships where your perception made you inconvenient, in spaces where what you could see was threatening to people who needed to stay comfortable in the blur. But that gift does not leave you, and today you choose to honor it rather than negotiate with it. You choose to carry the truth you have been given rather than bury it under the weight of what someone else needs you to believe instead. The truth carrier does not need permission to know what they know. They simply choose, finally, to act on it. These are not titles. These are not new additions to your identity. These are the parts of you that have been here all along. The parts that survived the managing and the waiting and the circling. And now, with the clarity of this moment, they are allowed to be fully seen. Chosen one. I want to close this time by doing something together, not a performance. A real moment between you and the God who called you, and the truth that has been alive in this conversation from the beginning. We begin with gratitude. God, thank you. Thank you for the season that brought this connection into their life. For whatever was real about it. For whatever was formed in the difficulty of it. For whatever they learned about themselves in the years they spent navigating it, including the things they learned about their own strength and their own capacity for love and their own deep desire to do what is right. Thank you that nothing has been wasted, not the confusion, not the waiting, not the years of circling a decision that was always going to come. You were present in all of it. You did not look away, and we thank you for that. Thank you that this moment arrived, that the clarity that has been building quietly inside this chosen one did not stay buried forever. That something you arranged led them here, to this threshold, to this moment of decision. Thank you. We acknowledge what you see. God, you see the weight. You see every morning this person has risen and managed and adjusted and found a way to keep going while quietly carrying something that was always too heavy to carry alone. You see every prayer offered in the dark about this, every time they brought this same confusion back to you because nowhere else felt safe enough to be that honest. You see every time they wanted to move and found a reason to wait one more day. You see the love that made the staying feel necessary. You see the exhaustion underneath it, and you have not looked away from any of it, not once. You see them fully, and you call them good. Now we release. We release the guilt about what they will think. Release. We release the fear that nothing better is waiting on the other side of this decision. Release. We release the old story that says love requires self-erasure. Release. We release the wound that taught them their worth was measured by someone else's need for them. Release. We release the pattern of making themselves smaller to be loved. That pattern ends here. Release. We release every word spoken over this life by this person or anyone before them that placed a ceiling on what they were allowed to become or how far they were allowed to go. Every word that said too much, too loud, too different, too much to ask. Release. And we release the version of themselves that waited for permission before moving. That version was faithful. It carried them through what needed to be survived. And now, with full honor and full gratitude, it has served its purpose. It is done. Release. Now we activate. God, we call forth the full version of who you created this chosen one to be. The cycle breaker, unafraid to end what was never designed to continue. The spiritual warrior, grounded, clear, unmovable, even when the cost of obedience is real. The truth carrier, no longer negotiating with what they already know. We activate the divine connections that have been positioned and prepared, waiting on the other side of this decision. The relationships that celebrate rather than compete. The people who can hold the full size of this person's life without flinching. The ones who are aligned with where God is taking them. Let them begin to arrive. Open the doors that misalignment has been standing in front of. Every door that was. Prepared every opportunity, every invitation, every provision that was arranged but could not enter because the space was occupied by what did not belong there. Let those doors begin to open now. Let every resource prepared for this specific season begin to move in the direction it was always meant to move. We declare protection. Cover this rising from the pull to go back, from the voice that will come perhaps tonight, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps in a moment of weakness, whispering that the decision was too harsh, that the relationship deserved more time, that leaving makes them the kind of person they never wanted to be. Cover them from that voice. Let the clarity that was found in this moment remain clear. Guard what is being built from premature exposure, from being shown too soon to people who cannot hold it. What has been released, let it complete its departure. What is beginning, let it be built carefully, in the right soil, with the right people, under the right conditions. Now we declare, I am the cycle breaker. The pattern ends with me. I am the spiritual warrior. I hold my ground and I move forward. I am the truth carrier. I honor what I know. I am not what fear said about me. I am not the sum of the years I spent waiting or the weight I spent so long carrying. I am not defined by who could not celebrate me or who chose to diminish what God placed in me. I am chosen, I am called, I am clear. And from this moment forward, I move in the full authority of what God put in me before I was ever told it was too much. It is done, it is sealed, we receive it. In Jesus' name, Amen. Chosen one, if something shifted in you today, if you feel the clarity that this message was carrying, I want to ask you to do one thing right now. Type the word clear in the comments, not for anyone else, as your own first act, as the declaration of a chosen one who has decided. If you felt called to explore the brain reactivation tool, mention the support for what this specific transition requires at the level where the drain actually happened. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment of this message. And if someone came to mind while you were here, someone standing at this exact threshold, carrying this exact weight, looking for this exact permission, share this with them. Not to tell them what to do, simply to let them know that the clarity they have been waiting for is real, and it is available to them too. Chosen one, you came here today for a reason. Go now, go clearly, go in peace. The life waiting on the other side of this decision has been ready for you for a long time.